seeing other people win. To me, success is not about winning for ourselves, it's making sure others win too. Even if we have to slow down every now and then and make sure that they have what they need. I think the problem is too many people, when they do get a little bit of a success, they forgot to send the elevator back down for the next person. And that's what I want my, quote, legacy to be. Kept sending the elevator back down again and again and again and again and again.
Hal Cato may just be the OG of servant leadership. He started Hands-On Nashville 40 years ago. He's an entrepreneur and prominent CEO of Community Foundation after several other nonprofit roles. And he is truly authentic in his pursuit of making things better than he found them. My name is Suzanne Reed, LBMC's Chief Marketing Officer and your host for Make It Count. In this episode, we explore what brings Hal fulfillment and how he determines what's next on his plate. We also hear about a role in the community Hal almost went for, and how Hal sees his current role as leading the Nashville community to solve some of Nashville's most urgent, pressing problems as a community. Welcome, Hal. I am very excited today to have you talk to us in the community. We've known each other for a while now. Goes back to the early 2000s, right?
Yeah, the good old days.
The good old days. But I'm so excited to talk to you because I think you have just such a profound servant leadership background of really just leading so many nonprofits. And then you have a little divergent that I think is fabulous for you to talk about too. So let's get into it. And I'm going to ask you the first question I ask every guest.
Okay.
So you have 3 months to retire or to go to your next, right? So what's Hal Cato thinking about as a leader?
3 months, that's going to fly by. But retire, I would say 3 things. Number one, obviously, just making sure the succession plan is followed, it's in place, everybody understands their part in it, and is doing the deal. That's number one. Number 2 is a lot of gratitude. Spend a lot of time thanking people who've been a part of my journey and the experience at that organization. Just give them a lot of praise and spotlight, but also just some one-on-one time to say how much they've meant to me. Both times when I left, Oasis Center and Thistle Farms, that was such an important part of the transition that I'm glad I did. And then I guess the third one would be, if this really is retirement, I better make sure I know what I'm going to be doing on day 92, so I don't just stop, get off the bus and go, now what? And I think that happens to a lot of people. They retire and they wake up and go, oh my gosh, now what? So, yeah.
I've heard some wise people say, don't think about it as retiring from, think about it as retiring to.
Right.
The slight nuance, right? But it does kind of make, I think to your point, kind of makes a big difference.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I talk to so many people that are considering job changes, and the first thing I want to go to is, are you running from something or to something? And that's such an eye-opener for them, because oftentimes they haven't thought about it that way.
So, okay, let's go back to the early 2000s. And I was on the Oasis Center board, and you were the president, CEO of Oasis Center. What are you most proud of from that time?
A couple of things. I tell you what brings me the most joy now is when I see young people that I got to know and mentor, 15, 20 years ago, who are now helping lead the city. And I met recently with Robert Wallace, who's the new chief of staff for MNPS. Talked the other day to Judith Clerjun, who's overseeing advocacy, public policy for Turk. And just hearing and seeing their careers and that they came up through Oasis Center and kind of cut their leadership teeth there. Now they are leading. So I love that. I love driving by that building on Charlotte, Youth Opportunity Center, and seeing a full parking lot and knowing great things are happening up in there. That may be what I'm most proud of my whole 11 years at Oasis Center. It would be that collaboration and that partnership.
Collaboration, that's a great word, right? In Nashville, I think we're so known for that, and it's one of the things I love about our community. When we're truly a community that I do believe we value still collaboration at a business, a personal, a nonprofit level. It seems to be relative in all of those things, which I know that's not true for all cities.
It's not. And you know what? Here's the thing. I mean, we're good, especially in times of crisis or following a disaster. This community will come together like that. And I had a meeting with folks at the mayor's office, and I'm like trying to lay a vision out there for what if Nashville could be the most collaborative city in the country when it comes to addressing housing, helping people get a better job, making sure every neighborhood has what they need. I mean, the big hard nuts that we just can't crack, we're only going to do it by breaking down the silos and collaborating. It's not even an easy word to spell, much less live out.
Yeah. And I think that's, again, another piece of your servant leadership. You're thinking bigger than your current role. You truly are thinking community. When I think of community, and I think if you looked that word up, I think Hal Cato may come up in the dictionary, truly.
Thank you.
Every time I'm around you, I'm always inspired by that. Let's talk about Oasis Center. What a fabulous story. And then Hal Cato becomes an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
What is that?
That was, I learned an important lesson about myself at Oasis Center, and that is when I get a little bored, I start creating things to keep me stimulated. And I know it's that entrepreneur inside that's really hard to let blossom and breathe in the nonprofit space. When you're not supposed to take risk, you're supposed to stay between the lines, stay in your swim lane, all of those things. And my final couple of years at Oasis Center, I saw a need. And it was through young people who helped me understand the impact of no college counselors, no guidance counselors in their school, and how that was limiting what was next for them. So I had an idea. I wanted to create a new platform, a new app that would help amplify the role of school counselors. And I left and came to the Entrepreneur Center, when it was still on Lower Broadway. Just learned that how much that I don't know. I learned so many things about myself in that journey, built a new platform in partnership with a lot of advisement from students called Zumo that was meant to be a communication tool for schools to use to better streamline and help students get the information that they most need that's relevant to them. Narrowcasting rather than broadcasting. One of the things I realized is the ed tech space is very competitive and there's very little funding here locally for it, and schools don't have money for it. And I realized that I got to pivot. I had taken investor capital, mostly friends and family around, built a really cool platform. Schools were enjoying it, but they weren't paying for it. Well, that's not much of a business model. So we, through just a fluky conversation, saw a similar need in healthcare. We reskinned that platform to be a communication tool for hospitals and ending up get some traction there. I had to either decide to do another round to keep it going or exit. And my heart wasn't in it anymore. I started that company because I wanted to help students get to college, not because I wanted to help hospitals communicate in their corridors. And so we were acquired by a group up in DC. And that was what I learned out of that. Number one was just how much I'm capable of doing when my heart's not in it, but I know it's the right thing. But B, to thine own self be true. I saved my investors money in the pivot, but I lost myself. So I was lucky that I found a way to preserve both.
There's so many lessons and so many points in that. But one of the ones I gravitate to in that is that you did pivot and that you're flexible. And you hear that a lot about entrepreneurism and your ability to take risks and to go where you need to go, right? And what I heard, though, is Hal Cato said, okay, I get it, and I've got to pivot. But then you came back to not where my heart is, not what I'm wanting to do.
Yeah, but I also, you just grind through it because it's what you have to do. And I was not going to let that thing fail.
How do you think that impacted kind of your next step back into nonprofit?
It's through just the grace of God or, Becca Stevens' persistence or what. I landed in perhaps the most entrepreneurial nonprofit in the city. So I found a place where I could go and be true to what I cared about, which is helping other people. But at the same time, how do we build a sustainable business around this? And how can we help the women coming through Thistle Farms earn more, learn more, and just believe in themselves through their employment in one of our social enterprises? So it kind of ended up being the dream job for me.
I'm sure you weren't thinking when you went into the entrepreneur aspect that was going to be the next, right?
Never in a million years did I think I'd be running Thistle Farms. I'd always admired it from afar. I bought the candles to give as presents. My mom was even on the board in the early days. But it's an organization that helps, women coming out of trafficking and prostitution and addiction. I couldn't have any less in common with the women in the program and employed by the program, but we clicked. And I fell in love fast. And they were like, didn't even know what a CEO does, because I was the first CEO that they'd ever had. And my number one fear about that job was I look like every person who's probably ever bought, sold, and abused them. So here's this middle-aged white guy coming in here to run this place. Who does he think he is? That was my fear. It was not, can I sell candles or can I run a residential program? It was, will they accept me?
And we know they did. And you did an amazing job with Thistle Farms. Yeah, that's great. We could talk about that for another 30 minutes.
Yeah,
yes.
It'll always be just part of my DNA.
And I love that you take the servant leadership, but you're also applying all the principles of business. And you talked about the taking risks, the sustainability, the things that are critical for a business, right? But you're applying it in nonprofit.
Yeah, but I think for-profit, nonprofit, whatever. I mean, if you focus, number one, on loving your people and making sure that they enjoy their job and they have what they need to succeed. Number two, taking care of your customers, the bottom line will take care of itself. I think when we flip that order and obsess in the wrong way is when we get a lot of bad businesses out there.
Everything gets misaligned.
Yeah, or nonprofits that are so worried about the bottom line that employees come third. For me, take care of the employees, because if your employees are taken care of, they're going to take good care of your clients.
That's right.
They are going to make sure that the women are served, that our donors are thanked and feel included, and customers are satisfied. Yeah.
So is there an event or something that happened in your life that you think helped direct you on this path? Did Hal Cato in college think, I think I want to be a servant leader. I think I want to make a difference?
No. I didn't volunteer in college. Volunteering really wasn't a thing when I was going through college. You would do, quote, service projects. I can distinctly remember my very first volunteer experience, and I was in the fourth grade. And we went to Senior Citizens, Inc. in downtown Nashville. And we spent a morning playing bingo and just talking to seniors. And I remember seeing one person sitting by themselves. No one was going over and talking to her. She was kind of scary looking. And for some reason, I was like, I'm going to go talk to her. And I spent the entire morning with her. And I just remember her hugging me when I left. And she wouldn't let go. And I was like, something good just happened. I don't know what it is, but by sitting there and being present to her, I brightened her day. And she hugged me, and it felt like my grandmother was hugging me too. And I've always had a soft spot for seniors. Matter of fact, Hands on Nashville was started out of me recruiting people to deliver Meals on Wheels to senior citizens. So that was when that seed first was planted. And it was 20 years before I recaptured that feeling through senior citizens and through Meals on Wheels delivery. And then I started inviting friends to help. And before you knew it, I was starting a nonprofit called Hands on Nashville that I didn't know what a nonprofit was. I never heard of a 501c3. I just was like, we're just going to volunteer and have some fun. And it's been part of me ever since. I was 22, 23. I was like, and if a 22 or 23-year-old walked in my office today and said, I have an idea for a nonprofit, I would do everything I can to probably talk them out of it. And people did that to me back in 1992. But fortunately, I pushed through.
So I would say you probably have always been on that leadership, nonprofit, servant. Fourth grade, that's pretty early on.
Yeah, it's pretty early. No, it went dormant for a long time,
right.
But it was always there. It was right. Like that flame was always, that spark was always there.
So many of the things you've done have benefited not just one individual, not just two individuals. I'm sure if we did a poll, there would be a lot of people that would come back and say, Hal Cato had a huge impact on my life, both in your nonprofit, your personal, your professional. But what do you consider when you define success or winning? How do you define that for Hal?
Seeing other people win. To me, success is not about winning for ourselves. It's making sure others win too. Even if we have to slow down every now and then and make sure that they have what they need. I think the problem is too many people, when they do get a little bit of a success, they forgot to send the elevator back down for the next person. And that's what I want my, quote, legacy to be. He kept sending the elevator back down again and again and again and again and again.
Go back to your younger self, and if you could coach that person, what's something you would coach yourself on differently? Is there anything you would go back and say?
My happiest is when I've lived from the inside out and not the outside in. And I spent that first 20-something years of my life trying to please everybody and do the right thing that I thought was going to get that person's approval. And you find your true vocation when you live from the inside out. And I wish that I had learned that lesson early on. I often say, you wonder what a different world we would live in if instead of asking kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? You said, how do you want to be when you grow up? And really honor that and help them find their pathway for how they want to be and who they want to be and not what. It's sort of the difference between occupation and vocation. We don't talk about vocation nearly enough, and we need to.
What is Hal Cato doing today?
Yeah, well, I'm leading the Community Foundation, which is, again, one of those jobs I never thought I would have. I've been familiar with the Community Foundation, started in the early 90s. Ellen Lehman, who was the founder, actually started Hands on Nashville the same time she started Community Foundation. So we go way back. And I'd received grants from Community Foundation when I was at Oasis and Thistle Farms. But when I left Thistle Farms, I thought my nonprofit career was done. I was going to go do something else. And I explored running for public office and some other things. And then when I realized, again, Hal, to thine own self be true, this is who you are. And Community Foundation Search Committee called and said, would you be interested in coming in and talking to us? And I said, sure. But I had a lot of ideas for things I wanted to see differently done from this foundation. So I went in there and I'm like, I'm either going to really make them mad and they're going to send me back out. Well, here I am, just a little over 2 years later, now running this foundation. And it's the perfect job for me right now. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. And I'm trying not to lose myself in the process.
It is the perfect job for you because I think Community Foundation, that's just at the heart, I think, of all the wonderful things you've tried to do for Nashville and the community. I mean, I'm already hearing people talk about you've opened your rooms to the nonprofits for them to meet. And what a collaborative effort that is, and what a big difference. That sounds like a small thing, but it's not for some of these nonprofits.
No,
it's a really big thing.
You've got to, everything you have to start with, how am I building trust and transparency? So opening the doors and windows and inviting people in to come and meet and talk and collaborate and share their ideas, that has gone a long way. We're not there yet, but my first week on that job, I started telling staff that I want the most important word in our name to be community and not foundation. And how do we live into that every single day? And we're doing it. We're not there yet, like I said, but we're on our way.
I have a feeling in a year or two, we'll be hearing even more good things coming out of that.
Well, Nashville's we're in a hard place. The explosive growth, the runaway cost of living, some of the city mothers and fathers who helped shepherd us through the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s and created some of our most notable institutions, they're passing away and they're passing the torch. Who's picking it up? I don't see many people picking it up. And so it's like, all right, I guess I'm going to do this, but I don't want to run it alone.
Such a good question for you to ask, because in your servant leadership, I think you are always thinking about, how do we keep this going? This is not just about me starting this. It's about how does the community keep this going, right?
My favorite question that I ask in every room I enter in right now is, what can we do together that none of us can do on our own? That gets to the true kernel of collaboration. Now, we have to be willing to challenge the status quo. We also have to be willing to build trust. We have to have a little bit of humility because, that's an important part too. And then creating a shared vision. And I feel like if you can, I call it the golden triangle of collaboration. It's trust, humility, and shared vision. And I'm working really hard to put all three in place because if you pull one out, it falls apart.
We've talked a little bit about Hal Cato's legacy, but 5-10 years down the road, what would you want to say your legacy was or your next? Knowing that many of the things you have done, you would have not perceived as being your quote next, right?
Yeah, honestly, this is where I will finish my career, is in this role at the Community Foundation. And I hate saying that because it dates me and I start looking at my own mortality, but I'm just being honest. And it's an amazing platform to do it on. For me, what I want Community Foundation, my legacy, to be known as, we were not afraid to take on the hard topics in this town, but we were really good at bringing people together to solve them as a collective. We can't do it on our own. None of us can.
I have a feeling in 5 to 10 years, you will be one of the master documenters of solving a couple of the city's major problems. I know you and I were talking a little bit about housing and some of those things before.
Yeah, we have the data. We know what the problems are. We know what they are, and they're not going away, and they're only going to get worse. And the longer we keep trying to fix them in silos or kick the can down the road, just the worse it becomes.
Great conversations, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Suzanne. Love talking to you.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this, please follow, rate, review, and share Make It Count wherever you listen to your favorite shows. Learn more at lbmc.com/podcast.